Take two.
Welcome to the While You Grow podcast with Dr. Courtney Addison and me, Addison Powell, where we will dive into all things pediatrics, occupational therapy, and other important topics around children and development. So, if you are a parent, occupational therapist, student, or just want to learn more about occupational therapy and pediatrics in general, then keep listening. For more information on the podcast and to follow us on social media, take a look in the show notes. Let's get started. All right, welcome to the While You Grow podcast. Again, I'm Addison Powell.
And I'm Courtney Addison.
And welcome. Today we have Chris Moyer. Did I say it correctly?
Yeah, Chris Moyer is my name.
Yes.
Dutch is my nickname. It's been that way for 40 plus years now.
Where'd you get that nickname?
Yeah.
All right. Dutch comes from a former platoon sergeant friend of mine, John Spizzo. When I was a ranger in the 1st of the 75th Ranger Regiment out of Savannah, Georgia. And his favorite movie at the time was The Predator.
Oh, okay.
And Arnold Schwarzenegger plays the lead role in that movie. And his character's name is Dutch. And John thought, hey, this is your new nickname now. We were in the jungle in Panama when he decided to give me that name. And, of course, the movie takes place in the jungle. And one of the things, though, one of the reasons why he said this is because me and another guy would constantly imitate Schwarzenegger. And so John Spizzo, again, he was a sergeant first class. I was a young sergeant at the time. And so in the Army, like ladders, of course, when a sergeant first class tells you what to do, you do it.
Right.
And so we'd be at the position of attention in the platoon. There's 40 men in the platoon. And he would say, hey, Moyer, tell everybody to get to the chopper. So I would have to say, get to the chopper. That's what Schwarzenegger says. So, yeah, that's where it came from. So,
oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So,
stupid.
It's kind of like an unlikely meeting because what does OT have to do with this legend here who now works in the sawmill as a operations trainer.
So I'm like the golf pro. I am the head trainer / technical. I'm the firearms trainer there. So tactical and firearms stuff. So.
Yeah. So this unlikely bond today. I've kind of heard a lot. I've listened to some of your podcasts. We've talked about Michael, my husband, before, and it all kind of came together, and this idea of resilience kind of came up. And this podcast is all about, pediatrics and kids, and we talk about how most kids are very resilient when they go through difficult situations. But a lot of our society now is kind of shifting a little bit, and what we would like to talk about today is how do you build resiliency? Is this a skill you can build? Is this something innate? Is this just what about resilience helps connect to success? There's a couple articles out there right now Addison and I have looked at that one of the biggest indicators of success later in life, whether it be financial, family, job, all those things, is the ability to be resilient. So we're going to talk about that today.
So because I had a long military career, if we juxtapose that with a young person who's going through troubles, whether it's bullying or family troubles or school troubles, name it, right? It could be anything. It's different, but I hope we can reel it all together to be, hey, look, this is like as a child, don't we learn from our parents? We learn from our community. We learn from our teachers. We learn from law enforcement personnel. We learn from those folks we interact with. We constantly do, right? We're constantly influenced by those outside variables that shape and form us, our young skulls full of mush, into what we are today. So, I hope that I can give some insight to that because I think, again, throughout my career, we're talking about it. I spent 31 years in the United States Army, worked for the federal government as well, going to different countries, and then now working with law enforcement agents and military personnel here at the sawmill in Lawrence. I've had numerous things happen to me, right? I've been to 12 combat tours. I've had a broken neck, many broken bones, actually leg, arms. I had cancer, had a bout with cancer. They gave us 5 years to live. We beat that. So, one of the biggest things I would tell any kid, by the way, did I say already, thanks for having me on the Addison podcast? I didn't say that at all. I should have. I'm glad.
Thank you for coming.
I'm glad that Mike brought us together. That's really cool.
Yeah.
And since you said we can bash on Mike, I just want to say, he's a really good dude. I'm not bashing on him at all.
We talk about his parenting a lot on here, and his aggressive parenting style, and his very militant style, which nowadays isn't very accepted.
Is it frowned upon?
It's just funny, some of the things that comes out of his mouth when he's parenting, and just how he has to hold back sometimes. And we have 2 wild boys that we just took on a trip, and that's definitely, if you want a marriage experience, take 2 2-year-olds on a airplane, for sure.
2 times 2.
2 times 2.
Man.
2 times 2.
In the terrible twos.
In the depths of the terrible twos. In the deep depths.
Well, that's maybe you have more to offer than I certainly do.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's. I hope that so we just thought we were talking offline about this horse story, about this Rich Strike story. It's a story about a horse. And there's some really cool stories about their horse anyway. Laura Hillebrand wrote a book called Seabiscuit, and it's a story about Seabiscuit, who's a little tiny horse that takes on War Admiral, the big horse. This is in the Depression era time, and it's really a story about America, a story about people, but the horse, it comes through the horse. Rich Strike was the same kind of way in 2021. Tragedy strikes as the stable is burned and 23 horses die. Rich Strike is saved. He's not even on the roster. He's 79-1. He ends up winning the whole thing. And it's just so. And you kids out there, I know you like social media. I'm not a giant social media fan, although I know that nowadays our business has to have it to survive. But that's where I found it. I said, it came up on my IG, Instagram.
Oh, you're using the acronyms.
The slang.
Oh, yeah, I used the IG, the gram. It came up on IG, and I said, I've never even heard of this. Yeah. And I'm a sports guy. I've never heard of that ever. I want to see, is that really real? And sure, I did some digging, and NBC has numerous very well-produced little snippets, 4 minute, 7 minute, 3 minute, about Rich Strike, about the family who had him, and about the rags to riches story. It's just amazing. And that, it goes along the lines of Seabiscuit. But in the end, the little IG thing came up. It said, this is God's plan for you. Never, ever quit. The ESPN/NBC announcer, Mike Tirico, at the time had said, oh, look, there's a horse. He's 79-1. But as we know in the Derby, you never know.
Right.
So, a little prophetic. Did anyone expect him to win? Absolutely not. They were hoping for him to be mid-pack. Yeah. And not to fall on his face and be last and turn out to be the winner. So the big things that we talk about, and I'm doing this masterclass podcast with a friend of mine for young men, don't ever quit. Never, ever quit. Just never, ever quit. Mm-hmm. It's one step in front of the other. It doesn't matter how hard it might be. There's light out there on the other side of it, whatever it is. And then later on, when you look back and say, well, it wasn't that bad. Maybe it wasn't that bad. And things can always be bad. But another thing to think about, too, I think, as a youngster, something, somewhere, happening to someone else is worse.
Right.
This podcast is going to be seen by Americans, most likely, right? Your demographic is most likely Americans. We have it really good here. Even though it may seem bad, even though it may seem you're dragged down or you don't have, what is it? When my son was he 16 or 17, he said, Dad, the internet is so slow. And we used to say, back where I came from, my bag of gold is much too heavy. This is a complaint where there's no need to complain about your internet slow. You have internet. Because I've been to different places across the planet where there isn't anything. The Afghan family who has nothing, the Iraqi family who has nothing, folks in Lebanon have less. Wherever you go, Panama, my goodness, just they don't have anything.
Right.
So these youngsters too, teenagers, go on a mission trip. See what it's like not to have clean water every day. See what it's like. This is purified water from what store is it? Doesn't matter. From pure. It's available all the time. This coffee is available. This air conditioning is available. We have medicine, for the most part, we have medicine that takes care of any problem whatsoever, and you can get it. So many third world countries, nations, and even second world, they just don't have it.
Right.
They just don't.
Don't have the access to. We've talked a lot about community and building this resiliency. Can you talk a little bit about your community? And in terms of like, how did that help? And going back to the horse story, you said, the community was a big part when he was down. Of here's a little bit. Here's how we can help you motivate and help you get along. And for the parents out there with a special needs child or with as an OT, being that community is important. But talk to us a little bit about how community has been important for you, and even in this Lawrence County community has been important for you in terms of this resiliency contextual framework.
I hope I can get it right. I hope it translates well. But so the 2A community, and this for folks that don't know, it's the Second Amendment. This is folks that want to own and understand how firearms works, and they believe in the Second Amendment. Of course, it's in the Constitution, so we have it. But we often say our community is like a tribe. So you have different tribes. Bring those tribes together of like-minded people, like-minded individuals, and do things that they all support and they all want. In a regular community in a town, you may not have that. You may have small separate tribes, but in the end, hopefully, right, through good leadership, right, we can have people come together. Now, but specifically to your question, how has my community helped me? When a soldier is, well, first and foremost, for me, it's a team sport, right? You don't, and I'm going to jump to another thing here in a second, but it's a team sport. You want to do things with other people. If you do something by yourself, singleton, you don't want to do a close quarter battle mission in this structure like this one that's so large. You wouldn't want to do it by yourself,
right? Because
Forrest Gump, and I may be dating myself to some of you out there, but Forrest Gump, if you remember, like Bubba Gump and Forrest Gump, or it was Bubba, I can't remember what, it doesn't matter. But they sat back to back in the mud, so they wouldn't fall asleep because they were on guard duty. But Bubba could watch his side, and he could watch the other. So 2 is greater than 1, and I'm going to go biblically on you here because 2 is always greater than 1. There's always a helper involved. That's always a good thing, and so that's what we're trying to launch as a clothing line as well. I'm starting a new business called 2 is greater than 1. But it's a team sport, my point. So when we do teamwork, it's 4 guys, 6 guys, 10 guys, 40 guys, whatever. It's all team involved. And so when somebody gets hurt, somebody picks up the slack on that, and you can learn a whole lot of really good things from working in a good group in the military or law enforcement or anywhere else. How about a sport? Do all you out there do a sport, some sort of organized sport? That's a great team time right there. And so I pick up the slack for you. You pick up. It's like the Red Badge of Courage. You pick up the flag. We all pick up the flag to go to the next thing. And I sincerely hope that other families, hopefully you have. If you mentioned a special needs child or something like that, because that's what OT really is focusing on. Can we not have other families that are tight knit? And if you're not in there, get in there, find a group, and then you're the advocate for that. So find a group and to do that. And so now we have like-minded, oh yeah, I've experienced this too. I've experienced this too. Let me help you. I can do this, do that. And hopefully there's that. And I'm a big fan of less government help rather than more. I know that the government can help us in these regards, though, and that's important. But I'm all about the community, the churches, the schools, or the philanthropists helping out much greater than the government. What else? So if a soldier is wounded, people come to see him. I had a bout with cancer. My first days in one of the special operations units I was in, an explosion broke my neck, broke my jaw. I lost 6 teeth. Ooh. I had a giant hematoma over here. That's why I got cracked right there. I have other scars. Some of them you can't see because of the facial hair, but it was an interesting time. I had been in the Army for a while, but I just got to this place, and it's a tier 1 level organization, and the phone would ring, and it would be another great guy, and then and somebody would come over, great guy, and I would say to my wife at the time, I said, "There's another great guy," and she's like, "You know what? I'm tired of hearing about the great guys. I'm tired of hearing about it." I'm like, "Well, okay." But that's the kind of community that hopefully we can all have. I was jaded. I was spoiled. I had a fantastic community. And so if someone's down, again, everybody's trying to help them out. So don't quit.
Don't quit.
Stay in the fight. We say this all the time, too. Navy SEALs say it all the time. Stay in the fight. It's got to get better. And there's a light right over there somewhere. It's right there.
Right.
Yeah. And we definitely like that community and like trying to find those resources out there. We've really tried to do that with this program and this school, because just last week we had what we called our baby day, and we had 25 babies come in with obviously a caregiver, and they got a free screening to see are your kids behind on any milestones, and just having that resource. And there ended up being a few families that were like, this was just so amazing, we didn't know this coming in, and then now we do. And so we're trying to do that more, and that's what we're trying to get out of this podcast as well.
That's awesome. You're doing God's work there. Awesome.
Yeah, for sure. And Dutch, are you a baby guy?
Am I a baby guy?
Do you like babies?
I don't have any babies.
It's just such the range, and so much happens in your childhood of, you mentioned bullying, and I think there's so many statistics out there too, and all of them. Bullying is very prevalent in our schools now. What advice would you give to parents on working with their own kids? On maybe we have a daughter in middle school right now, and she is very unique. She's very smart. She's on academic team, not quite the normal path, and our fear sometimes is that is she going to be bullied for being we call it a nerd kind of thing.
Sure.
And so what advice do you give to parents of middle schoolers or high schoolers on one, just dealing with those situations and not letting it take over their lives?
I don't want to be cavalier about it, and I don't want to be cliche, but there is some cliche stuff to say, of course. Back in the day, when I grew up, it was a common thing to say, sticks and stones can break your bones, but names can never hurt you.
Right.
I got bullied on the bus. I remember getting bullied by a kid down the street. We played a kind of football that wasn't football. I'm going to spare you the name of it. You probably know it somewhere in the back of your head, or you ask Michael about it later. But it was whoever had the ball gets tackled.
Right.
Whoever had the ball gets tackled. Whoever, and this constantly give the ball to me so he could smash me. Right. It was constantly. And, to me back then, I grew up I was born on September 11th, 1964. So, we played outside. We played Army outside. We climbed trees. We did all kind of stuff like that. And I'm not saying my father was a tough man, though. He's a plugger, right? He's still alive, so that's really good. But if we would come inside to say, hey, something bad happened, he was like, you okay? You're okay. You're okay. What happened? What was it? What's the big deal? But you're okay. And so strong mother-father presence. They were on the, I don't think I ever saw my parents argue about what happened to us. Mm-hmm. I had 3 boys, by the way. I was the middle kid. We had 3 boys. They probably went somewhere to the master bedroom or something and had a discussion and come out, and they were always on the same page. To me, anyway, that's the way I remember it. But it was a, hey man, that's okay. You can be tough out there. That's all right. Just pick it up and go. It's what. Actually, he grew up with 4 boys, and my mother grew up with 3 girls. So.
I sometimes think 3 girls might be worse.
It's a different kind of thing. I grew up with an older brother, so he toughened me up beyond belief.
Well, see, it's important. It's a tough world out there. It's always been a tough world out there. Yeah. You have to let some of that water get off your back like a duck. You just have to. Mm-hmm. Mom and dad can't take care of everything. You're not going to be protected all the time. Take your licks. put on your big boy boots, and it's like I said, I don't want to be cavalier about it.
Right.
But
the world happens.
Get tough. Poop
happen.
happens, right? Get tough. Try to get tougher. Some of the mindsets I went through as an Army guy was when I got to a pool of men, we had to go do a rucksack march for 12 miles or something, or we had to do whatever it might be. I wanted to be the last guy standing.
Yeah.
I always thought that this is what I want to do. I want to be the last guy standing. So I want to be the guy the coach picks. Mm-hmm. Who wants to be the last guy they pick? Nobody wants that. Mm-hmm. But also, or in addition to, someone always has to be picked last.
Right.
If we have 20 doctors that graduate from wherever, Furman, maybe, I don't know, what is there a doctor program here? Sure.
Oh yeah, there is.
So if 20 people graduate and one is a valedictorian, one's going to be last.
Right.
But we still call them doctor.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So
right.
These kids in life, I think we can still gosh, I can't even speak right now. I can't even articulate. We can still produce. We can still be important. It's okay. Am I as good as that guy? No. I'm certainly not as good as Michael Jordan or Tom Brady.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to quit.
Absolutely.
One of my classes I went to, we had 24 graduate into this tier 1 level organization, and 5 of them, so over 20% were Best Ranger. There's a competition called Best Ranger. It is excruciating. It is very difficult. 5 of them were Best Ranger winners and competitors. I'm like, I'm a nobody. I have an imposter syndrome here. I'm a clunker. I just keep moving, and you just don't ever stop, right? So hard work sometimes can override talent. There are people with talent all the time that don't continue. People with talent, whatever. I knew a guy in Ranger Battalion who I was a big sports guy at the time, and he came to the 1st Ranger Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment, and we were talking about baseball somehow, and he said he caught for the Atlanta Braves. And I said, "You did what?" And he said, "Oh, yeah, I was in the big show."
Yeah.
He was in the big leagues. He was in Major League Baseball. I said, "What in the wide, wide world of sports are you doing here?" Uh-huh. "What are you doing here?" He said, "Well, I had a drug problem." He had all his talent, came to the Rangers, had a drug problem. Okay, so he joined the Army. Okay. So a couple months later, the drugs took over again. Off he went. He wasted all that God-given talent, just wasted it.
Yeah.
And it's hard to see sometimes. He wasn't much younger than me, but gosh, it was just, what a bummer.
Yes.
Yeah.
To play in Major League Baseball, that's a big deal.
Yep. But it kind of brings back that resiliency and that kind of idea that it's something you have to develop. You have to learn to be resilient in various ways, and it's you had your parental support, and being parents, you're there to help guide that. What happens a lot as a child is the interaction with your parents. Like if your parents would have coddled you, or you might have not turned out the same way. But it again, we're not trying to be, like you said, cavalier about it, but it's that parental influence. Like parents have to be strong in order for their children to be resilient.
Completely agree. Concur.
Right?
Yeah. Do you see going forward? Do you see now? Even you, Addison, do you see folks wanting to get paid? Do you see what I'm saying? So we live in a TikTok world, IG world. We live in an instant gratification, DoorDash, Instacart. Right now, I want it. I get it. Mm-hmm. The commercials on television. You deserve a better credit. You deserve this. You deserve that. Deserve has nothing to do with it, right? But we're constantly told, and I think even more so now, because I wasn't exposed to a lot of that stuff because we didn't have cell phones. I mean, I had a Motorola Razr, the flip phone, which now is coming back somehow. But I had that in like 1994. When was the real internet? When do you even remember? When was really everyday wide internet? Was it 97, 98?
I think Google was like 98. I think Google is. I'm right there by the age of Google is. I think.
But you were born.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I was born. Yeah. Definitely.
That's good.
I'm not that old.
But, it's so we weren't exposed to some of that, but I think now we are. So do you see, that's my question, I guess, do you see a softening of people because of these things?
I think it goes a lot. I think the internet is a great resource, and we've talked about accessing communities, but it's also, you can get sucked in. You don't have to deal with your problems as much. You don't have to deal with those mental health battles when you're behind a text and all those things. I think without the phones and the internet, you had to deal with people face to face. You had to learn how to problem solve and conflict resolute and all those things that I think a lot of our generations are missing, because a lot of those growing up can't really have conversations and face-to-face conversations or know what's going on in order to deal with themselves.
Totally agree with you. And so case in point, daughter had a problem. Mm-hmm. She lied to her mother. She lied to me. She had some problems. It all became because of that $1,000 computer she had in her hands all the time. Mm-hmm. And so we removed it from her, and we actually gave her a phone. Back in the day, I say back in the day, so 4 or 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, there was a phone called, terrible. It couldn't access the internet. Okay. You could do everything else. You could text your friends. You could call people, but you could hack into it. Actually, we found out we could hack into it later. That you could get to the internet, but for the end user, really, it was harder to get to the internet than anything else. Right. She changed completely because of this thing, and it's young skulls full of mush out there. They're not ready for all that stuff that they are allowed to see. Right. So you gotta really look at that. Gosh,
yeah, I mean, we talked in an earlier podcast, we talked about screen time and how, that's so easy to just hand your kid your phone, but before the age of 2, they really shouldn't be exposed to that because it can impact them.
Appreciate that. And what did you just say? It's so easy for the parents to say, here's your iPad. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Go crazy because I have something to do. Mm-hmm. How about stopping that and dedicating more time to the kid? Right. I mean, how many times have you seen it? You walk into a waiting room or something, and they're watching Jerry Springer on television, and the kids, I don't know, playing
Minecraft or whatever.
Yeah, or
watching YouTube,
or something way worse, or watching YouTube with no parental guidance. What are you seeing on there? What the heck is that?
Right. It's definitely
it's more prevalent.
Addison went to a doctor's appointment with us just for the exposure for developmental psych for Mason, and we were just sitting in the waiting room, just noticed every kid in the waiting room
had a device in front of them
on their face, and it's a balance. I think life's a balance, and I'm sure you can agree with that too. We have all these different social issues that are happening with our kids, and it doesn't discriminate with a kid with special needs or not, that it comes back to that parent, that influence, and that community, and all those different things that we can do better. And you're talking about it's our responsibility as a community, as a philanthropist, and all those things coming together. But as an OT profession, it's our responsibility too, to be those guiders and help parents in those situations. So definitely.
Yeah, and as a disclaimer, we're not trying to shame anybody for their choices, what they do. It's just more so we want to get the information out because a lot of people just don't know. Right. You don't know the impacts of this, that, and the other, and we just want to. That's part of the podcast. Right. We want to share that.
Mm-hmm. Cool. In the end, I think some children are being softer because parents are a little lazier.
Yes.
Because that thing that we hold in our hands allows us to be a little bit more narcissistic than we were before. Oh, I get that dopamine shot when I do this, to do that. Yeah. Oh, I like that. Hey, don't bother me. I got this going on. And that's hard line, man. That's hard. Yeah.
I noticed it with myself. I actually deleted my personal social media back in November of last year, and I have it back now because I have to work social media for this podcast, which is we were just talking about it earlier. It's so exhausting.
Social media is exhausting.
But I remember it was just a habit. I pulled up my phone, I clicked, I knew exactly where the app, Instagram was. Mm-hmm. I clicked on that, and it would just be scrolling for hours. And then 2 hours later, I'm like, I have not done anything productive. I feel awful because I haven't done anything, and I just wanted to cut that out, and it was nice. I didn't spend as much time on my phone.
Yep. And a big theme that has come out of, these podcasts that we have is meet parents, meet OTs meet kids where they're at. You know, can you talk a little bit of, I guess, like just in working with different people on building resiliency? I know you're working with that with young adults. Talk about that, like meeting someone where they're at and building that resiliency with them.
Can you be more specific?
Yeah, I can try to be, because it's kind of in my head. Like I have it in my head of what I want to ask you, but it's like, how do we get this skill better? How do we develop this skill as community, as a society, to build more resilient kids when we have all these other influences coming along?
I think we just need to really cut through the static, cut through the white noise, cut through the extraneous voltage. We would say straight voltage a lot. Cut through what simplistic, maybe. What is your mission? What are you prepared to do? How do you want them to grow up? Parents, what are you prepared to do? And then the kids, I just want to get paid. That's the wrong answer. That's just the wrong answer. Can we develop a better sense of selfless rather than selfish? And where does it start? You know, and I don't want to get preachy on us, but it could start with the Bible. It could start with the belief in God. Because like we said earlier, if it matters to that one, there are so many things that come from the Bible that are they're so good, and people don't even realize they're from the Bible.
Right.
It's stuff that's from the Bible or from William Shakespeare. And it's just amazing, right? It's totally amazing.
Yeah.
If you listed all these, I think it was the Glenn Beck program, who listed 100 things.
Yes.
And you're like, what? You had to be friendly reminded that came from that. Well, that came from the Bible too. That came, but it's amazing. Even for, again, secular believers or secular non-believers or whatever, it's still an amazing place to start. But also grounded in family. So we know the stats of the family, right? Daughters and sons that don't grow up with a dad are more likely not to have a job, do drugs, hurt animals, hurt people. The stats are out there. We can find them, and I know you can find them and throw them up on the board. But so strong family, a belief, right? A strong family and a work ethic. Mm-hmm. What are we prepared to do, right? You want a work ethic, right? Kaya the Wonder Dog.
So you probably can't see her, but a beautiful dog is taking a nice nap.
A nice little nap with us. Yeah, I definitely think that work ethic. It's funny you have that.
You need
story,
that intrinsic motivation.
That intrinsic, and just there's so much good knowledge out there. A friend of mine is a nurse, and her son takes piano lessons over here, and he comes home one day and he's like, Mom, I just learned this awesome song. It's by this guy, Beethoven. And she was like, Beethoven? She's like, you mean Beethoven? He's like, no, new guy, Beethoven. And just exposing yourself to different cultures, different diversity, different, like you said, go somewhere else. Learn something else about somebody else. And, you know, there's so much magic in that. And just for a kid, and just explore. Like, let them explore.
And it's not always that easy. I get it, though, too. It's not always that easy. It's not. We're sitting here going, you just came back from a trip. Last year I was in Europe. You know, throughout my career I traveled all across the globe. Some things do come out of hard work. So again, it wasn't easy for me to do the things I did, but I got to go to places that were very unusual, and I loved every minute of it. Right, and even in some sort of training event, there was a time when I was in a ranger school camp up in the mountains of Georgia. It was in wintertime. My fingers were split. I was fatigued. It's the second stage of 3 stages. I'm trying to make it simple for everybody. You do these 3 stages. You do one in Fort Benning, one at DeLonga, Georgia, and one down in Florida swamps. And so this was the second phase. It was cold out. It was freezing. It was snowing. And I had to go. I was miserable. Again, my fingers were split. I couldn't manipulate things. And they said, well, you need to go get water for the whole group, right? So I gathered everybody's canteens, and I went up to the stream. And that's when it hit me. You're like, this is miserable, but I got to this point where the sun was coming through and the ice was breaking on the water, on the rocks, and I'm like, it was so beautiful. And then you stop for a second, stop for a second, take a look around, see how beautiful it is. It's not mundane. If you do the same thing every day, so what? It's still not mundane. Stop for a second. Check out the new growth on the trees in the springtime, or whatever, the insects. I don't care. I don't know what it is. It doesn't matter. Anything. But there's plenty more out there than just walking the straight line, with blinders on. I don't know if that answers any of those questions or not.
It does. Yeah, it absolutely does. Well, Addison, do you have anything else?
Not that I can think of. I mean, we dove right in.
And what I love about this specific podcast is that it's different. A lot of OT information out that is very, this is this, and it's predictable. It's this, we all, but, sometimes that's not real life. Real life is the daily battles, the daily mental battles, the daily things that us mundane Americans go through to just really navigate this life. And we're all doing this life, together, and we're just big community people and it's just such a good resource. And I just want to thank you for
thanks so much. Thanks for having me. It's been my pleasure, of course.
Yes.
And I just hope that, certainly I wish you great success as you continue.
Yes.
You're an integral part of this now. So now, by the way, how many podcasts have you done?
This will be number 8, and we'll release it Friday.
Okay, you're done now. You're in. Feet are in. You got it. Just keep doing it. Just keep going. Keep going. And again, like we said before, if it matters to that one.
Right.
Yeah.
If you affect one. That was training in Indiana where, you could go. I don't know how many people I've trained throughout my career. I have no idea. But the guy in Indiana, we got done training for a week. We did some close quarter battle. We did some marksmanship training. I went back to North Carolina home at the time, and he writes me an email and says, we were just involved in a shoot, and I shot the guy. And he said, without a doubt, your training allowed me to go back to my wife and kids. And I'm like, that's all I want to hear right there. If it matters to that one guy, that's it. And if there's a ripple effect, if he survived that, and then his son survives that, and it goes on and on. So that's, keep your head up, work hard, and find out what your mission is. Find out what your why is too, right? Everybody has one, and just keep moving forward.
Right.
And that was good encouragement for me today because, this is at the end of the day, this is a project. I am very passionate about what we're doing. But I went into her office just earlier today, and I'm like, we don't have this many numbers, because at the end of the day, that's my data, how many listens we get, how many followers we get, and I got
she has to get 1,000 followers, or I'm gonna fail.
Yeah, that's probably not gonna happen.
But it's a grind. You right now, you're an entrepreneur. You just opened a store. Think of it that way, and it's gonna take a while before you get back into the black. You're in the red for a while. You're red for a while. Okay, now people start hearing about us. Now people start tuning in. Now, we helped somebody, and they wrote back, and just keep going.
Yeah, I just only have 14 weeks to do it.
But
you're going to keep it going
even when I'm gone. And there's such a good community that has supported this podcast.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of, equipment and just people liking it and sending us feedback. And I have Sloan that is out there from one of the cohorts before. She watches and listens to every episode.
She does.
And just kind of unpredictable, but just that one, like you said, that one person that texted you and said, wow, I really liked that episode. Yep. I really liked what you said about that. I'm like, that's great.
Fuel.
That's great. Yes.
Fuel for the next one.
Fuel for the next one.
It is.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kaya.
Today. Kaya, you were amazing.
Working hard.
We had a baby on the last one. We had a little 2-month-old.
Come here.
You got to get in a shot. Yeah. Oh.
You're in the shot now. You want to turn?
So pretty. Sweet girl.
Beautiful.
But yes, thanks for joining.
Yes.
Thanks.
And thanks for listening. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Cheers, y'all.
Thanks for listening to the While You Grow podcast. If you learned something on this episode, please like, share, and comment. Join us next time as we dive into all things pediatrics, occupational therapy, and other important topics around children and development.